All right, everyone, thanks for being here. Let's dive on in. So, we're talking about using design thinking for building psychological safety. And in this video, we're going to be talking about the prototype and the experimentation and iteration phase. So, at this point, you should have your design challenge, knowing what it is that you want to work on. You should have a good amount of research done about the people you're trying to solve to gain empathy and do user research. Then you're going to do a lot of inspiration and brainstorming, and you chose an idea that, okay, we feel really good about this idea. So now it comes to the idea of creating a prototype and testing out your idea, because it's impossible to know if your idea will actually work or not. It's just part of the process. So we want to learn as fast, without stakes, and with spending as little time, energy, or money possible to know if we're on the right space. And that's what a prototype does. A prototype is a very quick, cheap, easy thing to have your people that you're trying to solve for interact with. And it's also so that you can then learn if you're on the right track, right? So it's really, you're creating a simple version of what it is that you want to do. So, I mean, a great example here is movies. Before they produce the movies, they do a lot of drawings. And in between the drawings and the movies, they take shots here and there. So there's a lot of kind of prototypes and things that they're testing out to help them get to that movie. And so that's a common exercise that you can use in the design thinking process to get towards the solution of creating psychological safety in the workplace. Psychological safety generally doesn't happen overnight. And a lot of times the things that we think we want to do that would create safety aren't necessarily the thing. So the prototype really helps you get to dive in more and try to figure out what it is that you're really trying to learn. And so what you're going to do is, with the prototype, you're going to try to create this thing for people to interact with so that you can learn. And so there are a lot of really great tools that you can use to just start prototyping and getting your idea fleshed out. So for example, you can do what's called paper app prototyping. And that's, you can download the app Marvel, and it's really simple, really easy. You can just sketch out an idea. You take a picture of that idea, and then it pops up on the app, and it's almost like the beginning of an app. Then you can connect it so that when you hit a certain area on the paper prototype, it then goes to another paper prototype that you made. So it's almost getting a sense of like the flow that might actually work. So you can see if things don't make sense when people are playing with it, and things like that. So that's a really simple way to kind of wireframe an experience so that you have a sense of how people interact with it. Now, if you want to go a little bit deeper and dive more into high quality wireframing, you might use tools like Figma or Balsamic to get a little bit of a better sense. The next thing you can do is set up Google Slides. So you get people to kind of go through the slides, and at each slide, you can ask questions of, oh, what did you think about this? What did you think about that? So it's just a great way to visualize what you're trying to create and for having something that people can interact with. So if you're trying to create psychological safety in the workplace, you might have thought of a bunch of like 5 or 6 different programs, and you can kind of set that up on Google Slides for people to look at. Or you can also turn that into a pamphlet and give people the pamphlet and ask them, hey, what do you think about this idea as a way to create safety? Another thing that you can do is also just do a live scenario. So you can kind of mock up how people might interact with one another just by role playing and doing a live situation. So an example is what Uber did. And again, we're just using these types of processes to inform how we might create psychological safety. So even though I say Uber and you think, oh, that's not what I'm going to use to create psychological safety, well, be a little bit open and think about, okay, maybe I can learn something from them. So for example, when they were first testing out their experience, they were wondering how people would respond to a car coming when someone looks for it online or sets it up. So they gave basically someone a phone where it had a fake kind of tools on there, or a fake app. The Uber app was not really set up. And so they pressed the button to request a car. And then someone who wasn't connected to the app was contacted and who was ready for them and came around the corner to pick them up. And they got to see how the person responded to that moment. And that's what helped them get a sense of, oh, we're onto something. Rather than having to build out the whole scenario, they created, or rather than having to build out the whole product, the whole service, they use just kind of live scenarios to help get a sense of if that would actually work or not. So these are just different things that you can create, or different things you can do to, again, just have something that you can give to the customers, to your staff, and get them to experience it. Let's say it's a meeting. Well, what if you just had a mock meeting and you tried a new way of engaging with everyone in the meeting, right? You gave them a scenario that they might really need to talk about in a meeting, but you just tested one meeting out with this, and then you got everyone's feedback. Oh, how did you like that process? So maybe, for example, might be before you disagree, you have to ask clarifying questions or show that you understand. And so you really push heavy in the meeting to do that. And then afterwards, how did people feel about that? What did they like? What did they not like? What would be a better way to do it? And so that's what you're trying to do. You use this as an experiment and really trying to identify, what could we turn this into that would really work for people? And so in the experiment, you try to identify what is it that you're trying to learn. Often, like, how do people respond? What do they like about it? What don't they like? What are they looking for? And then you just kind of observe how people show up in the experience and just write down a whole bunch of notes of what it is that you saw happen. So again, you're just being an experimenter. You're being like a scientist. You're giving them this prototype. You're seeing how they're responding. You learn from it, and then you try to make it better. And so the prototype is not the final product or service. It's a tool for learning. That's it. Just to learn as much as you possibly can. And then after that, you just do it again. You iterate and you continually develop. And so there's still more to do. And you can go back to all the processes that you worked on, and you can look at, okay, well, what needs to be changed here? What do I need to adapt? What do I need to change? So you might need to look at the main challenge and say, well, we got that wrong. It's not that people don't feel comfortable with this. It's that they're really bothered by that. Okay, so going back and identifying the main challenge. And then, or maybe you might need to go back and say, you know what, we don't know enough about what issues that they really have. So let's go talk to them. Let's ask better questions and understand what's going on. Or you might go back to all the ideas and say, okay, you know what, we tried that idea. Let's try this one instead. Or you just go back to the prototype and say, okay, what do we change about this thing that we created to make it much more engaging and much more informative? So once you do the prototype, once you run your experiment, you take what you found, you see what needs to be changed, and you try it again. This time you're trying it with much more information. You're a much more informed person, and you're really making a difference in this rather than just creating an idea in your head and then telling everyone to do it. That doesn't really help people feel safe. What helps people also feel safe is the continual efforts that you do when working with them to create safety over the long term. That consistency, that dedication, that care in really trying to make it as best of experience as possible, that helps create safety. So this design thinking process, in it of itself, there's a lot of things that are happening that help create psychological safety. Asking people's opinions, saying that they're important and we're trying to solve a problem for them, hearing their ideas, Those things help create psychological safety. So the design thinking process is an amazing process that you and your team can use to help create safety in the space. And it's also helpful if you want to solve any other big problems that you and your team may be having. I hope that this was helpful. And if you're looking to dive in deeper, we actually have a really cool free resource for you. It's in the link below in the description. And it really dives into what we're talking about of how you can use design thinking to create psychological safety. We talk about principles, we dive deeper into the steps. And so that's available for you for free so that you and your team can really come together and create a more innovative and also psychologically safe space. I hope this was helpful for you. I just want to say I appreciate you taking the time with this. Thank you so much and have a great day.